Yeah, hi. What I mean by the AI security tsunami is the number of bugs that are being found and reported by AI assisted researchers.
Human proxies.
Human proxies is another word. Now this is going to be less specific about than I planned, because I thought we would have had by now a security release of 6 bugs that we have pre-announced, on top of 2 that we did at the end of last year that are all found by AI. And I was going to be able to discuss, the commonalities and the kind of things they find, and the differences, all kinds of interesting detail, but I can't. There is the pre-announcement of them. One of the pre-announcements of them listed the CVSS scores and stuff, and you can go and find that on the mailing lists. But just don't worry, just wait till the fix comes out. Now, to believe that there is an AI security tsunami, you don't need to believe that it works. There is just so much money being poured into finding open source bugs that if they were all being forced to use grep or something like that, they would still be finding bugs. And if AI is a force multiplier, whatever, that's good. But if it isn't, it would be hard to know what would look different. I think it probably is. I think the AI is helping them, but we don't need to believe that to have the problem. And this is the business model for companies like IL Research, which is one of the big ones that finds good bugs and lots of open source stuff, is they find these open source bugs, and then they can say to companies with closed source that someone will find your bugs, but we'll do it first and you pay us. And they have the examples that they've found in Samba. So we are getting free bug reports, which is not always fun, but I think it's better for us to have them than not have them. And there was this old saying that given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shot over there. And I think, no, even the people who said it didn't believe it. They pretended they did. But what this is revealing, I think, what the AI security tsunami is revealing is that, the 2 bugs that have been published, the biggest bug we found was in the NBT server, that there's nobody, the Samba 4 Wins server, that probably nobody in the world was using. But there's a CVS 10, which is, if you know CVS 10 is the worst score. It means unauthenticated remote code execution, basically, as root. We had that sitting there, and nobody looked at it. It had been there since 2011. And so these robots don't know where not to look. All the people are looking at the things, the SMBD, the KDC server, all the things that they know matter, that really well looked after, and things that no one thinks about. And they just have been sitting there unlooked at, and there have been bugs that maybe you need a weird configuration to make them show up, or maybe they're just in bits that no one thinks about, but they are always there. It's a little bit of a worry that has shown that we're just ignoring stuff. I mean, there's 2 million lines and nobody, or more, about 2 million lines of C, and then there's a whole lot of generated stuff in the Python. And nobody knows it all, and there aren't enough Samba developers to kind of keep over the whole lot. So it's good that there's these computers looking for us, but it's not good that they're making us do lots of work. I don't know. Until last month, there's I count 8 bugs that are real, and I think there's more than 4 duplicates, but I couldn't be bothered finding them all, and there's been a few false reports where like there's nonsense stuff. Like there's this one, a CTDB one, that even Martin was somewhat convinced was a real bug for hours. He spent, and you know, lots of people stared at it for a long time, and then we realised that it wasn't ever run in production code. It was just a bug in testing. Like I can't even remember, for some kind of use after free in a test. And but because of the way the code was structured, the AI couldn't work that out, and it took us a lot of work to work that out. And the invalid bugs are quite often like that. The other ones, like this, hackers copied the Samba code into the wrong place and used it in a threaded thing. And Volker just said, "Why would you do that?" And then he got a private message saying, "Sorry, sorry for wasting your time." The reason it takes lots of time is we have a security process, which I've simplified and put into a graphical kind of form. Now, so I'll go through that. When I say I've simplified it, I've reduced the text down to shorter little bits, but all the points are in there, or one or two of them should be, like the feel suspicious is kind of implied. Someone should feel responsible and make sure that it's really a security defect. So the first thing is you have to read the bug, you have to think that it might be real, then you have to feel responsible. And there's a kind of race condition of everyone racing in the opposite direction, of not feeling responsible. And if you do feel responsible, which is easier if it's your code, but a lot of these bugs are in code that is nobody's code anymore. It was written 20 years ago, and that person's gone. Then there's some steps. You open Bugzilla bugs, all this stuff, and then you try and get this with the dotted box that isn't listed. But often we spend a long time trying to get the reporter onto the bug so that they can join the discussion. And I don't know, like young people today, they don't know how to log into Bugzilla. That's tricky for them, or else maybe they're not even reading the emails. The AI is reading the emails and reporting back to them. I don't know how it goes, but it takes a bit. And then there's a step, writing a draft advisory. And so many times we don't do it in this order. So we've got this security process that we say we're going to follow, and most of the time we don't. And it kind of doesn't matter, except that then it gets really tricky to work out if you've done all the right things, because you're already doing them in the wrong order as soon as you started. So this is, as you can see, we're moving down the list. We'll finish before 5 o'clock. Now we do a CVSS calculation, which you can do online. You just kind of say a few things about it and it gives you a number. Quite often the reporter will claim one number and we'll work it out and get another number. And it took me a while to realise that the reporters, sometimes they're exaggerating and sometimes they're underestimating. So you just can't trust their number, and then you'll get to, and different team members will have different ideas, because you've got to decide if it's a difficult thing to exploit or an easy thing to exploit, and that sort of thing. But if we come up with a low number, less than 5, then we're meant to ask the wider team and say, should we do the security release? And if we decide not to, we're zooming off down to this thing where we're doing a normal release. But maybe we go through it. Maybe we start moving through. Start moving through a series of escape clauses where we either decide to do an unembargoed CVE, is the word we kind of use, where we get the CVE number from Red Hat Product Security, and in our process we have this, if Red Hat don't answer, we ask MITRE. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, but we still have that, so there's another branch there. So we might decide it's an unembargoed CVE, or we might continue down this other branch where we're kind of saying, well, if it's a CVE because it's using RC4 or it's something worse, we're not going to patch it because that's just what we're dealing with. And then there's timing attacks where this is about, like, I don't think this is really relevant anymore, but this in there. If you're doing a string comparison for a password or something, you can, if you're using the wrong, if you're not using a constant time comparison, you can use the timing attack to work out that the password is short or long, whatever it is. But we fix most of them by using a constant time comparison. But in any case, we just say we're not going to do a CVE for that stuff. We'll just fix it. So because you can spend a lot of time working out what your password is with these timing attacks, but it's not worth doing the whole fuss for. And like user enumeration, and Kerberos, if you ask for someone who's not there, it basically tells you, no, that's not a real name. And there's no way around that. Well, then, no. I can imagine ways which you couldn't get around it, but I'm sure you'd make worse problems by it. So it's just considered part of the process. So anyway, so we either go down the unembargoed CVE side, or we go down the normal release course, or we get down to asking Red Hat for a CVE. And so the normal release, it's not quite a normal release, because often there'll be things in the comments that we want to mark private before we unembargo the bug. It's to not embarrass people. Maybe because if it's not so much in these AI things because it's all made up, but sometimes people will have posted PCAPs from their real domain or something to get. And if we're deciding that it's not a serious thing, we mark them private, and then no one ever sees them except the Samba team, where they show up as pink for some reason. And so the normal releases and the unembargoed CVEs have gone down this branch, and then everything else comes down here, gets the CVE number, and then we write the patches, attach them to the bug, and if we've marked them as work in progress, we keep going round in circles until we get them ready, and then we ask for review, and so then we have a new character comes in, which is the reviewing team member who reviews the patches, and then the flow goes back to the original person who writes back ports for the affected supported versions, which is usually 3 or 4, because we have 3 supported versions for security. But when there's a new one in release candidates, so like once 4.24 RC1 was released, then we had 4 versions for a little while, and then when the final 4.24 is released, then we're back to 3. So like basically half the time we're doing 4 versions, half the time we're doing 3. And we make separate patch files even if it's ancient code and the same patch would apply back to 2007. We still make a separate patch for each thing. That's what we say we do, and some of these bugs we don't do that. And then we do an auto build or a private CI for each of those. And now, in this latest round, there was 6 bugs, there were 4 releases, so that's 24 auto builds that no one cares about, because everyone is going to have all of the patches. Everyone is going to have all of the fixes in their build. I don't think anyone is interested in picking and choosing. Like the distros aren't, and that pretty much covers everyone. So we end up spending hours and hours of elapsed time, and kind of a difficult to evaluate amount of work running these auto builds, going away, coming back to see if they worked, and doing it for the next one. Like, we would do it 24 times. We would have done it 24 times if we'd followed this, but I chose not to for this. But yeah, we only care about the combination. And then the reviewer comes back. So we mark the patches as having passed CI, and we ask for each patch for each branch that we're supporting. We ask the reviewer to come back, and basically they've got to make sure that it is the same patch that they first considered and that it applies. And then they go away again to come back later. And we have another person, the release manager. Bjorn here is our current release manager. And so the person who feels responsible was meant to ask the release manager for a release date, and the release manager says something, and then starts doing it according to the rules, and does a private auto build for each patch set. And this is actually the auto build test for the entire patch set is the one that we care about. And what I think is we should actually have done that one earlier rather than doing the 24. We should have done just 4, and actually we did in this last round. And then we'll do it again down here maybe. Well, yeah, down there. And then at this point it says we should create a tracking bug if there are multiple issues. I think it's more useful to do that at the beginning, so that then you can work out if there are clashes between the bugs. Like if you're only finding out after you've decided your release bug that your release date, that the whole patch set doesn't work together, because if you're fixing two different bugs and they're touching the same files, you need them to work together. And so we need to know which bugs are going together in the same security release way at the top. So I think that should happen much earlier. In fact, what I think we should probably do is do more like a Patch Tuesday thing, but not every Patch Tuesday. I mean, like every few months, have a date that we set in advance and decide that we're going to have that. Though I don't know what anyone else in the team thinks, so we'll have to discuss that. And then we need to finish the advisories, ask for review, and the reviewer comes back for their last action. And then we get to 10 days before the release, and we just check everything. It doesn't actually say who does that, but I guess it's the responsible person. And then you add the Samba vendor's alias to the CC list. Now there is an alias on Bugzilla, which is a good Samba vendor, and the people, distro people and other vendors are on the alias. And then we do something else so that they can see the bug, and then we trigger email to get sent out to them all, so they all know. One of my ones, I forgot to do that, which was a little bit bad, but sorry. And then they've got 10 days to panic and work out what to do and apply the patches. And then it says in the process 7 days before the release date, we send out a message to the lists telling everyone. I've started to do it to the OSS security list as well as the Samba lists, just to see if it can get wider. And that gives people a chance to know that they need to update their servers or decide. Now, it used to be just like there will be a security release on this date. And then we switched to affecting ADDC or affecting file services, because basically half the people don't need to panic about one or the other. And then we started saying, well, if it's only 5.2, they don't need to panic anyway. So we started saying how bad it was, so people could decide how worried they would be about each thing. And then with the one with the Win server, I started adding with an unusual configuration or with a common configuration, because I think it's also useful. Like if people know that they aren't doing anything strange with their Samba, they shouldn't have to panic about services that they kind of know they don't have turned on. But if they're going into the weird areas, and they probably know they are, then they have to have doubts, and they have to think that they might need to patch. So it's trying to be useful without revealing any information or too much. I mean, all it's saying is there are bugs. And then we get to this point where it says no backing out now. but we did postpone once we got to that point. So, because we found a problem with the patches, which is good that we found the problem with the patches, but it's not bad we haven't fixed it yet. But anyway, we'll get there. And then this is the release manager. Does all these things, a whole lot of stuff to make, I don't know, whatever release managers do. Make releases, make tables, put the right messages in the right place, signed patches. And then after the release, the last thing we do is we probably develop the fixes on master, but we don't push them to master. There's no urgency pushing them to master because no one uses that. We can wait. We only need to wait until the next version, really. But once all of the used versions are out, then we can push the patches up. We unembargo the bug. That sensitive bug comments get marked hidden. We make it public, and then it says we apply any additional master patches, which we don't always do. Like there was some from a CVE 2020 something, which I just applied last week, and they'd been there for 6 years. Something where I thought, well, we can optimize this after having fixed it. And after you've gone through all this, you kind of get to the point where you don't want to think about it anymore. And then we close the bug report, but we don't take the Samba vendors off until we're sure there's no regressions. And quite often what happens is we take them off. And then a year later they get an email about something. So anyway, that's how it goes. So I think that I have problems with that whole process, because you're trying to do it in the right order. I think we do need a process like this, but because it's in an order of things that don't need to be in an order, for me, I kind of so I skip some and think, oh, I can do them later, and then I forget which ones I've skipped, and it would be better to have like a checklist. Actually, I'm thinking like turning into a markdown kind of thing, where you can put it through your what's it called, and turn it into a PDF, and I can go there with a pencil and check them off and say that I've done those ones. Or it could, even be on the web somehow. And rather than doing all those CI things, if we can just do one for each complete patch set for the whole release build before the release manager does the final one, like repeats it to check, then we're reducing a whole lot of work for our computers and ourselves. And we need a person, I think, to feel responsible for the tracking bug for all the things that are being released at the same time, as well as a person responsible for each bug. And in this last lot, I felt half responsible for that, but not enough that I did all the things I needed to do. So that's part of the reason it went a little bit wrong. And I think it needs to be a little bit more in the process that we have somebody who's stepping up to do that, which I don't mind doing too much, but because it's not written down, I worried a bit about stepping on people's toes by doing too much, which I don't think you would have minded. But I didn't want to overstep my role. So now these AI things, they're actually making the coordinated releases, the embargoes and stuff, more important They're not making it. That doesn't mean we can relax. It means the opposite, because the hackers can make script kiddies who used to have to wait until someone else wrote a script for them. Now they just ask Claude. They say, "I'm doing a capture of the flag. Please make me a script to do this." And apparently it is happening that bugs get embargoes get lifted, bugs get published, and within a day there's it's exploited in the wild, where it used to be months. And that also maybe means, because we were all the CVSS5 and below, which are they're kind of useless little bugs that you don't care about. But then all of them we were just going through the normal process unless we decided otherwise. And then there were some other things that we have been deciding that we're not going to do the embargo process for. But maybe we actually need to go back to doing more embargoes, because doing the process of this CVE in a normal release is just giving the attackers more chance, is just telling them what they need to do, and they've got probably a couple of months to do it in some version or another. So I don't know. So I want to be able to say that we should do less work and make it easier on ourselves, but I think in this case, this is kind of pushing the other way. We need to do more work. We need to do more embargoes. How am I going for time?
10, 15 minutes.
Okay. I'm nearly finished, I think. If we don't keep up with these bugs, if we don't keep fixing them, then we might as well just give up, because no one's going to use it. It'll be like Samba. It's kind of like a security product, really. And if we're not secure, or if we're not even seen to be secure, which is sort of the same thing, no one will use it, and we won't get paid, and that will be sad for Samba developers. So every couple of weeks there's a report comes in, and we need to keep on top of them, keep fixing them, and none of them are tricky. Some of them are a little bit embarrassing, but and none of them so far make me feel like we should just give up, or that like I'm actually surprised how well we're doing, which is good. But as soon as we stop, as soon as we drop behind, we are lost. So we need money. That's what I'm going to get to. So one thing we need to do is maybe just more seriously trim out the bad parts of Samba, which like some of the strange servers that I don't know what they do, but they were there. WKS something. And removing unused smb.conf options, which is tricky to do because we don't know what's unused. I don't know what's unused anyway. One idea I've had is just to get the mailing list archives, and if nobody has mentioned an SMB conf option, like 'cause a lot of people, Roland will say, post your smb.conf, and people will, and then if they've never mentioned something, then that option is probably just never used. Though it has been pointed out that the NAS vendors will have weird configurations, and they might never post to the mailing list. So I don't really know what to do, but that might be a way of then if we can get rid of options, then we can get rid of the code that those options enable, and that code, because it's probably never been run, it's probably been written a long time ago in a different security environment. It's probably code that some LLM will come along, it'll find a bug in it. Now if we're having the code there, we can't say, well, that doesn't matter, no one uses it, and not do the security process. This is my feeling, that if we're having it there, we need to at least do the embargo, do the release, even if the fix is just pulling it out, deleting it. And so if we delete it before we do that, we save ourselves time and work. And that's all.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Douglas. I believe I remember that Alexander was saying 4 million lines of code in Samba this morning.
Right.
How many lines of code do you think there could be removed if things followed your process, your suggested process?
We have a bid for 1,300 over here. Well, so a lot like test code we don't need to remove, and then actually like the RPC code, the ideal files, they generate millions of lines of code, but we don't really count that. I don't know.
Yeah, you should change that and say, I have some questions to the audience. Who is, for example, using still the iPrint backend?
Who is still using the iPrint backend? Oh, the hand went up. Yeah, what is that? Is that wrap thing?
It's from Novell.
Oh.
Novell iPrint.
Yeah,
who's
okay.
the author? Michael Sweet.
It's almost the same like the ICT backend. It's just a slight flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we can remove 1,300 lines of code.
We in the Samba team, we kind of have a standing joke about how unmaintained the printing code is. And it's a hazing ritual that new members get assigned printing bugs. They never actually do get assigned printing bugs, but maybe we should get someone new to come along and remove all that stuff.
So I don't know how often do you get this, but thank you for doing what you do, because without you there would be no Samba, and that applies to your team, you, and generally the people who do security for open source. But my question is, how does it looks in practice? How many of these reports do you get? How much time does it take to fix this? It must be huge and time consuming.
This year it's been most of my work. It's a little bit hard. I find it hard to timesheet. But it's not just the ones that are valid that are hard work. It's the ones that look like they're valid, and you've got to try and work out whether whether it's a real thing, and it's quite interesting because you find out about new bits of code that you didn't think you wanted to know anything about, and you have to write tests. Well, you should write tests. We generally, like to prove the bug, you write a test, and then you can prove that you fixed it. Yeah, I could easily be a week or two per bug, I guess. Some of them, like there was a collection, I've mentioned this thing yesterday, Andrew's Security Concerns, it was called, which was basically 2 years of work for Andrew Bartlett and a whole lot of other people. And there was bad luck. Metzer spent, I don't know, months on that one. But then there's some of them where you can really just say, oh, we just, return an error code at this point and it's fixed. And there's still the work of, and those ones, that's when you notice the overhead more of having to write it up and having to do the coordinated release and stuff like that. It kind of makes it worse because it's a one-line fix and a week of fussing around. I'd like to reduce the difficulty of fussing around, but I also want to keep it well organised and having a proper process. And I'm actually quite new to sort of leading on these bugs. I've done a few fixes before, but I've never done the until the last couple of years. I've done the put together the group of things to release together, and so I'm trying to do a few to get a sense of what needs to be fixed, and this is where I'm up to, what I've been talking about so far. But yeah.
One short question.
Thanks, Douglas, for your talk. I was wondering, for the NPT server, which people shouldn't be using, couldn't it be just a side project and not to be in the Samba code by itself? So it wouldn't be a Samba release, security release. It would just be a Samba Foundation project with this called NPT server. So it would avoid, because the last security announcement was a bit scary with a CVSS very high, and people were, even if it was very good for you to try to give hint on if it's important or not for people, but they are still a bit scary with that numbers.
Yeah. It's a good question. It feels like it'd be a lot of work to separate it, though maybe not. I would be pushing work out to people like the distros to package it so that the people who were using it together could get it, but maybe some of this we can remove some code by finishing the source 4 and source 3 merge, which kind of stalled once everything was working. That's my feeling. And Volker did one a few months ago where there was a server on source 4 and there was a server on source 3, and they did the same thing exactly with completely different code, and he just said source 4 just goes and looks over there. And we can probably do a bit more of that stuff. But even just finding things to deduplicate or pull out, it's it's hard to know how long it's going to take. It's one of the things. Like I couldn't give you an estimate.
It was more like those parts that are very used, if they can be just put as a side projects, and so it won't be a Samba CV.
Yeah. I guess we could. It shifts the load. It shifts the load of trying to maintain it as a side project. Like there's been we've been moving the other way. Like we had LDB was treated as a separate project within the same repository, and had its own release numbers and still does. But it's just annoying to try and make it move at a separate timeline than the main project. And things like TALOC and TDB, I guess we would treat them as a separate, they'd get their own CVEs, which would of course affect Samba being the main consumers. So that's one way of doing it, is keeping it in the same repo and giving it its own kind of security status. But then pulling these things into it, separating out the tree, it would be something of a nightmare to try and make it compile, I think. Maybe that doesn't matter. It doesn't fill me with joy, the idea of doing it. Is that time?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.